4, 5, 6, 9, 6, 4, 7. 4, 5, 6, 9, 6, 4, 7. 4, 5, 6, 9, 6, 4, 7. Your call has been forwarded to an automated voice messaging system. 77345669647 is not available. At the tone, please record your message. When you've finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Hi, Senator Hunter. This is Kim Delaney calling on behalf of the Saba Museum. I'm calling to see if you are planning to attend us for this conversation on reparations this Friday, Juneteenth at 6 p.m. Please give me a call back at 312-287-4571, where our graphics people are holding up promotions and flyer because we'd like to include you. So we're waiting for your response. So again, this is Kim Delaney. Hope you're having a great day. Give me a call at 312-287-4571. Thank you. Bye. Hello. Oh, there it is. Okay. Hello. Hi. How are you? How are both of you?
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you all?
Okay.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I was just thinking, I wonder if I made sure that she got the email. So good morning. How are you, sir?
Well, I think to be 101 and 7 months, I'm in pretty good shape.
Oh, wow. We need some of that.
Wait a minute. Okay. Is that better?
That's fine.
Hello.
That looks good.
Hello, Kim?
Can you all hear me?
Okay.
Yeah, that looks
Pretty good.
so. What would you like me to call you? Are you a doctor?
Pardon?
She says, are you a doctor?
No, I'm
Yeah, honorary.
I'm an
Honorary.
honorary doctor of several colleges,
Yes.
but let me explain. Before I finished my doctoral dissertation, to see on television a guy by the name of Martin Luther King, later Dr. Martin Luther King. And from that point, I didn't care to continue that paper. And so I stopped short of the dissertation paper.
Okay, I understand that. I almost did too. Can you tell me? Can you tell the people where your proper name and where you were born?
Timuel, Timuel, D. Black. And I was told by one of my Jewish friends after he went that Timuel stand for child of God.
Wow,
in
that's about right.
Judaism.
Okay, okay. And where were you born, Mr. Black?
Birmingham, Alabama, December 7th, 1918.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing. That is amazing. So I teach African American studies, and talking to you is like talking to a living history book. So this is fantastic. My mother was born in Alabama. That's where that side of my family is from, Birmingham, Alabama. So let me ask you, for you, can you tell me, what does freedom mean to you? So if you had to respond to the statement, what freedom means to me, what would you say?
Freedom means to me that I will be, and all that I associate with will be treated equally, and freedom to try to make this a better life and a better world.
Wow.
That's what freedom means to me.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. So tell us, I talked to you briefly and you were telling me a little bit about, I told you we're coming up on the 60th anniversary of the Sabo Museum, which was founded by Margaret Burroughs and some other people. So can you tell me a little bit about, I know that you knew her, so can you tell me a little bit about your relationship with Dr. Burroughs?
With Margaret Burroughs?
Yes.
Oh, we were contemporaries, though she and her family left the South later than mine. We lived in the same general neighborhood, then called the Black Belt, now called, it has another name. But the Black Belt idea was founded by the founder of the Chicago Defender. And he meant that we were bound in restricted areas. And so I met almost every African American of consequence. And Margaret Burroughs was a contemporary with me, though she went to Inglewood High School. I went to Inglewood, but transferred to what was then Wendell Phillips, and later they built the new building and I went to DeSable. But we hung around together at dance and other activities in the neighborhood for us then younger people in our early teens and later teens. So I met Margaret Burroughs at that period, along with Charles White, who was a grandmother, and Bill Green, who were also artists, young artists.
Mm-hmm. So you said at dance studios, are you talking about clubs and lounges? Or are you talking about a regular interpretive dance studio?
Pardon?
You said you all went to dance studios together, right? You and Margaret Burroughs, you all hung out at dance. Did you say?
Oh, we just had. Well, at that time there were entertainment halls for younger people all over the South Side, roughly from 31st Street on the north to 67th Street on the south, from the west side of Cottage Grove on the east, and the east side of Wentworth on the west. In that confined area, we had what we say parallel institutions, and entertainment for young people was one of those parallels. So we had many with the Warwick Hall, we had places that we enjoyed one another, and across all the lines, that is, at that time, there were, we might say, class separation, class lines, but all of us young people hung out together in the Warwick Hall, the Savoy, and those were just some of the places that existed for all of us in those days.
Okay. When you say class lines, which class group would you consider you all to have been in?
Pardon?
You said
when you
class.
say what?
You said class lines. Which class group would you consider yourself and Dr. Burroughs to have been in?
Well, we were not measuring class by income.
Okay.
It was by behavior. And so we might live in the same block, in the same neighborhood with doctors, lawyers, and so Margaret Burroughs and I were housed in what might have been the middle class. South Park, which was earlier Grand Boulevard, one of the big boulevards in the country at that time, that was 55th Street, Garfield Boulevard. All of those, what we call swanky places,
Okay.
we enjoyed together. And so we didn't think about class, we just knew in some instances, mama and daddy made more money, but we all dressed rather exotically and beautifully, and you couldn't tell by what we wore what class we happened to be in, because we dressed up every
I would love to see some of those pictures.
day and certainly every weekend.
Yes. Okay.
I would like to, and I think Margaret may have some of those pictures, because early in her life, she began to develop her artistic, what later became artistic tradition.
Okay. So did you teach history? Were you a history teacher? Was that your job?
When I finished college,
Yes.
yeah, I was a history teacher, but also at the college level, when I was teaching at the college level, I taught history and anthropology and sociology.
Wow.
In fact, At that time, I was the only person in the whole uh, junior college uh, faculty that could teach any one or all of those subjects. And at the same time, I was in an administration. I was a dean and a vice president in the
Oh,
junior.
wow. At which college is that?
Well, I started at Wright, which was on the north side, because they wanted, at least the faculty and students wanted a person of color to be at their college on the north side and not only be a teacher, but to be an administrator. So I was both at Wright College. And then when they created the Black College out that was on the south side, I transferred myself to that. I forget the name of it.
Was it Kennedy King?
No, it wasn't Kennedy King. It was
Okay.
I've forgotten the name. When
Yeah,
you get
that's
to be
okay. Yeah.
But it was a newly established junior college.
Okay, at a 101 years or almost 102, what is the most profound thing that you've seen, you think, in your life? What is the greatest lesson, the most oddest or the biggest change or any of that? If you had 100 years of living, what you want to tell us about 100 years of living and the things that you've seen?
Well, I have seen economic, political, and social changes, and proud to say have participated, as did Margaret Burroughs, as a younger person, and then instructing younger people when we were teaching on bringing about that change that was promised in the Constitution, as well as the Declaration of, not just the Declaration of Independence, but the Emancipation Proclamation, that all, and they said men, but we interpreted all human beings are created equal. And having adopted that promise and that idea of democracy, Margaret Burroughs and I say Margaret Burroughs and many others of our generation participated in trying to bring about that change and succeeded in many ways economically for ourselves, but unfortunately, many at the lower academic level were denied the kinds of opportunities that we enjoyed. For example, my brother, who was a brilliant person, and also a great Walter Black, he became a prominent lawyer. Walter, he was a brilliant scholar at Tilden Tech at that time, Tilden Technical High School, where Blacks were. He was also a great athlete. And yet he was denied the chance to play, but he did because some of his white fellow students demanded. But when he went to the University of Illinois in the late 1930s, though he could play, and though other Black African-American athletes could play great basketball, they were denied the chance to be on the team. The Kappas, that is sorority, they could beat the varsity team. They could beat the all-white varsity team. But at that time, they were denied the chance to be on the team.
Oh.
Now, that barrier was later broken by people, students in the next generation, because the competition had become as much racial as the playing field. And so Illinois and Notre Dame and began the Joe Bowes and all those later in my generation, doctors and lawyers, they were given the opportunity to be on the team, and they did, and made those teams a better team. So I say this as an experience of life that my generation carried from their ancestors, their parents and grandparents, to give the listener, the viewer, the knowledge that we were deprived of equal rights, but we were always prepared, if the door opened, to walk in. We were prepared academically and spiritually, prepared all the way to walk in. And Margaret Burroughs is a glaring example of that idea that all people are created equal. She was very active in her early years. And some of us who were friends of hers who were active with her.
Wow. I like that you said that you were prepared. I have you were born in 1918, you said?
1918,
December the
7th, 1941 was Pearl Harbor Day.
Uh-huh.
And I was in my favorite tavern on 63rd, 411, with Joe Bowes, who earlier had broken the barrier at Notre Dame, and he later became a doctor. And I forget my other companion's name, who became a college professor in Black College. And they kept saying Pearl Harbor has been bombed. We didn't have television at that time. Pearl Harbor has been bombed over the radio. And I turned to Joe and I said, she shouldn't have drank so much. Well, I later found out Pearl Harbor was not a place, not a woman, but a place.
Okay.
And that was history. December the 7th, 1918, a famous day in history. I was born. December 7th, 1941, I would call an infamous day. World War II began.
Wow. Let me ask you this. So if you were born in 1918, you were born in some tumultuous times, right? You were born, as far as race related, you got the St. Louis riots, 1917, you got the Red Summer, 1919 happening here. And so you would have been a youth in these times where you had to be very careful about where you went, and that just this racial tension was brewing all over America. And so I'm curious to know, in your lifetime, have you ever seen times such as this? Are you aware of things that are going on today with regard to racial tension and fights for equality and things like that? And then for your lifetime, have you ever seen times such as this? How would you rate these times on a scale of, for badness, 1 to 10?
Well, one of the things I think your listener, your viewer needs to, that people of my generation, our parents fled the South. They were generally people who had lived or worked in around urban areas of the South, like Birmingham, New Orleans, Atlanta, So they were urbanized in terms of the culture that they had enjoyed. That was the first great migration. They fled the South for 3 or 4 basic reasons. One, to fight back with some degree of equality against organizations like the Ku Klux Klan, where some of the blacks who were aggressive had been lynched, male and female, had been lynched publicly in the South after the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, denied, they had been, and also to vote. They had been denied the opportunity to vote. My dad used to say, they would ask, did your granddaddy vote? Well, if your granddaddy he didn't vote because he couldn't or he wouldn't, then you couldn't vote. That was a way of denying that generation. So they fled the South to be able to fight back is also, and to get education for their children, academic education. They had been denied, most of them had been denied the opportunity. Some of them who were the products of, on one hand, white parenthood and reflected in color, skin color, they were the fortunate, but most who were darker skinned like my mother and father had been denied the chance to go to school beyond the 3rd or 4th grade, though they could read and write and were smart. And they wanted to get a better education for their children. So my generation, that of those who fled the South, most of us graduated at least from high school.
Mm-hmm.
And our children went on to college.
Yeah.
That was part of the culture that we brought with us in that migration, which fled the South because they had lived and seen and been victimized in urban areas, couldn't walk on the same side of the street. And of course, the latest of that was Emmett Till, who during the civil rights, before the civil rights movement, was executed because he looked the wrong way at a white lady. So that was the culture of the South, that generation of my father, the urban blacks who were urged by Robert Abbott, father, come north, young man. They sent the newspaper, the Defender, south with railroad porters,
Right.
which would get, and they would get rid, and there was a feeling that life would be better, more equal in the North. And so they fled the South. The second great migration, of course, is a different story. They were pushed off the land. And because they had been denied the chance to do any of the things more than, there was, at that time, in Chicago and across the country, in the urban areas, there, because of Mr. Carl Hansberry, Lorraine Hansberry, another story, another artist, her father had taken
Did
a
you
case.
know her? Did you know
But
her? Did you know Lorraine Hansberry? Have you ever met her?
I'm sorry.
Did you ever meet Lorraine Hansberry?
Oh, very well. I
Oh,
was there. Listen, I was their grocery boy.
wow.
They
Okay.
they had we had a grocery store on 59th and Prairie. They lived near, right down the street, and the Ms. Hansberry would order groceries, and I would deliver those groceries. And at that time, Lorraine and Perry and Carl Jr. were going to Inglewood High School. And then Lorraine, who was an expert, she met Margaret Burroughs and they became close friends. Like
Wow.
Margaret was her older sister. They
Wow.
became close friends. Do you hear me?
Yes. Wow. That's pretty powerful. Did I hear you say too that you met, you knew Francis Cresswell? Did you say that?
Pardon?
Did I hear that you say you knew Francis Cresswell?
I met Francis. I didn't know. I guess I knew her pretty good. Again, you have to think about the old man's memory.
Okay.
Isn't it stuff?
Okay.
Isn't it stuff? But
Did you
all of
ever?
us knew one of the, and one of the things I wanted, all of us of the same age generation knew one another.
Mhm.
Whether we went to Burke School or Farron School or any of those schools, or went to Inglewood or DuSable or Phillips or Hyde Park, because we were concentrated in this ghetto area, we knew one another.
Mhm.
And so the talents and the ideas were shared. And one of the things I'd like to say, because of we saw the series, the successes, we felt a sense of optimism. We lived in the Great Depression. Read about that, the Great Depression. We lived in the Great Depression, but we were not depressed.
Mm. Wow.
You see, my mother could say to me and my brother, my brother was an example of success, but she could say, see Dr. Dawson down there? Well, Dr. Dawson, Carl Dawson, the brother of the later congressman, and Carl Dawson was a doctor, the Dr. Dove down there. Well, their children, yes, I saw them, they were doctors. My father worked in stockyards in the steel mill, which was blue collar, and that was considered lower class economically. But I could see them, and the children went to school with me. We all went to Inglewood because we were not able to break the barrier at that time.
Mm.
But we would, our parents and their neighbors demanded that their children get a good education. And they would go to school at that time, regardless to the education. Most African American women didn't work outside unless they were professional. So they used to meet together at a place which later became the home of Margaret Burroughs, called the Quincy Club. They would meet and talk about the world their children were growing up in.
Mm.
And the men would meet on what was then South Park at what was called the Appomattox Club. And they would talk about the world in which their children had to grow up in and talk politically about changing that world. And so such people as Dawson's and all took the political stand, while the women took the academic, educational, and cultural position, and they joined together and then came the South Side Art Gallery or Institute, which later, and Margaret Burroughs was there at the opening of that. And so, though we economically were separated, economically, we were not separated socially, culturally, or spiritually. See, Nat King Cole, Ray Nance, all those young people had examples of Earl Hines and others like that, Duke Ellington, and to be examples. Do you understand me a little bit?
Yes, I do. Okay. I'm not gonna hold you longer. That was fascinating and I could listen to you all day. I have two last questions. One is, what is the importance of history to you? What is the importance of history?
That history as an example of knowing that my African ancestors and all of African Americans are mixed, but they get accused of being Black because they have ancestry that came from Africa. I have the experience of knowing that my ancestors, my grandfather, my great-grandfather and all, and mother, had to have a spiritual idea, a feeling. As they were drugged, they did not volunteer. They were drugged from their country. And I ask younger people all the time, when you go shopping, what do you go looking for? And eventually one would say, oh, Mr. Black, when I go shopping, I look for the best I can find for the cheapest price. What do you think the slave traders did when they went to Africa? The best they could find for the cheapest price, the cream of the crop, and separated them from one another as property, not as human beings. But my ancestors and those of my generation had the attitude, most of those before had the attitude, most they died, said, before I be your slave, I'll be buried in my grave. They had that attitude. My ancestors and your ancestors and others like us had the attitude, I'm so glad that trouble don't last always. Oh my Lord, oh my Lord. They had the spirituality, and transferring that to the generation of my father and mother, who saw slavery, not lived in, but lived in sharecropping, where they were not able to share the crops, even though they had made it. Mm-hmm. And yet kept living, made those of my generation, because we were in the, made us feel responsible to our ancestors to keep on going, regardless of what the time. And so we inherited the spirituality of life, as well as the idea that we must be prepared, the optimism, the door is going to open, be prepared to walk in. And so we were, and our children even more so.
Okay, in 100+ years of living, do you believe that you have experienced freedom? Do you believe that you are free and have experienced freedom in this 100-year trek here?
I am free in terms of the legal, but in terms of the social, academic, and economic, no, I was not free. And young people today, young African Americans in the lower class, who are no longer in the shared opportunity, the Black middle class, are being shut out because they are being measured by what we call standardized tests. And because of standardized tests, I know this from my academic background, are cultural. If I live in a neighborhood like Hyde Park, for example, I will be able, regardless to color, I'll be able to do well on the standardized test. But if I live in a neighborhood, poverty-stricken neighborhood, like some of the neighborhoods that blacks, then I will have not had the cultural dynamic that inspires and informs me. And I can't pass the standardized test. Now, I had this experience later as a teacher when I went back to do Sabo. They had a tracking system, as they had in White, which would make the lower class, and this was also true in Gary, Indiana, where I taught at Roosevelt High School. They would not have the same academic experiences in that lower track. And when they got to take the standardized test, they would not do as well as the youngsters in the higher track. And so the separation began to spread and become greater and greater. And today, that separation that deals with standardized tests is, you can tell by the color of their skin that more African Americans don't pass the standardized test and therefore excluded from the opportunities to go to the privileged colleges and universities.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so my final.
So they don't say race, they say, oh, he or she didn't pass the standardized test.
Uh-huh. I get you. I get you. So my last question that I have is, what gives you hope? What gives you hope? After all,
Well,
almost 102 years old.
yeah, well, the shared history of my ancestors and the changes that they made that made life better for me than it had been for them makes me believe, as was expressed, forget the person who did that the impossible, we do that immediately. Well, some of us have done what in the early part would have believed to be impossible. Mm-hmm. The miraculous sometimes it takes a little longer. And we have seen the first African-American president of the United States who did the miraculous. A generation before him, there would have been prediction there will never be a Black president. Mm. But he proved it. And yet, what was the reason is because there was the optimism of earlier successes that gave him, like Harold Washington and others, that gave him an example of doing the impossible and made him feel obligated to do the miraculous. And that is a spirituality that we need to share with younger people, because we do have the examples of being prepared. The door is going to open. Be ready to walk in.
Very good. What year did you come to Chicago?
After the riot of 1919, in October of 1919. I was 8 months old, I think.
Wow, October of 1919.
I told my mother, this is the joke. And I told, when things were going, I looked around when I was 8 months old and I said to my mama, I'm leaving here. My mama said to Daddy, Dixie, this boy getting ready to leave here and he doesn't even have to change his diapers. I'm going with him. But the humor part, that's the humorous part. The facts are my father and mother, my brother and sister, and me, I was 8 months old, to Chicago. And I have lived in and around Chicago most of my life.
Amazing. You came to the year of the riots. You came to Chicago. That's amazing. Is there anything else you would like?
Sacred Ground tells a little bit of the story
Okay.
of growing up in Chicago.
Okay. Is there anything else? Is there a book about your life?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Do you have a book written about your life? Have you written a book about your life?
Yeah, that's
Sacred Ground?
short story, Sacred Ground,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
growing up on the south side of Chicago.
Yes. Is there anything else you would like to share with us that I might not have asked?
The only thing I'd like to repeat is to help your listeners or your viewers understand that it is this belief and the spirituality of life that keeps you going. The faith in the future, a belief that you have an obligation, regardless to the negatives that you may face, you have an obligation to keep on going. And that is the spirituality that helped my brother, sister, and I, and many others in our generation to keep going and open. And therefore, in Dr. King glorifying that attitude that carried the idea that we shall overcome. We shall overcome one day. Deep in our hearts, we do believe that we shall overcome. And that gives us spirit to keep on going, because history indicates that we can and shall overcome.
Thank you.
It's been worth your time.
Thank you very much. And so I'm taking from that the theme, the founding youth is faith and future, you said. That's the theme, faith and future, right?
And being prepared.
And being prepared in faith and future. Thank you very much for your time. I greatly appreciate you. And as usual, whenever I listen to you, it's amazing to hear all. I mean, there's no way. I mean, you are, like I said, like a living history book. We appreciate you. Thank you so much, okay?
And insert the fact that Margaret Burroughs was a friend of mine for all of our young lives.
She's a friend.
And she exemplifies that by the museum.
Can you tell us right quick, I forgot to ask you this on camera. Can you tell us right quick about you telling her about the building? Can you tell us?
Well, Harold Washington selected her to be on the board of the
Park District.
Yeah, the Park District.
Mm-hmm.
And that building, which had formerly been an arboretum early days, and then a police station, had been emptied. It was empty and about to be torn down. And I suggested to her that she take material which she had in her overcrowded home in the 38th block on Michigan and bring that to this building. And she was able to obtain that property, which was deserted, at a very low cost, and transfer all of that wealth of material, which had been exemplified by Paul Robeson and other famous people that she knew, to the new building there on 57th and Cottage Grove. And that started the museum, DuSable Museum, which was named after the first non-native to settle on the banks of the Chicago River. Jean-Baptiste Point, Sable, French father, Haitian mother, and raised in France. But later, the pronunciation of his name, DeSable, was for pronunciation changed to DuSable. But Margaret Burroughs brought that name along with the historic artistic material to the new building, and that has created another item for all of us, all black, white, brown, hooded, to learn the history of African Americans and also the American history, which also carries with it world history.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. We're coming up to our 60th anniversary at the DuSable Museum. So we appreciate all that you have shared today, and we'll feature you in that. Yeah, thank you. We appreciate it. And thank you to your beautiful wife, Miss Zenobia, for arranging this and assisting us getting this done. We appreciate that. You want to make a show in Zenobia? Do you want to tell us what freedom means to you, Ms. Zenobia?
I'll let you know when I achieve it.
Okay, all right. Okay. All right. Thank you all. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. Hello? Hello? I think it's frozen.
We're about to leave.
Thank you. Bye. See you, Tim Black and Miss Zenobia. See you. I appreciate you all. I see the screen is frozen. I hope you can hear me.